Welcome to Military News Channel. Moscow's Ministry of Defense says the strikes on Monday that hit two air bases deep inside Russia used Soviet-era, jet-powered drones, but it has given no further details.
Arms experts say it was highly likely that the particular craft used was the Tupolev Tu-141 Strij, a surveillance drone developed by the Soviet Union in the 1970s and repurposed by the Ukrainians, possibly carrying an explosive. Analysts say the drone can fly at 600 miles per hour at low altitudes, much like some cruise missiles, making it difficult to detect and shoot down. One of the Ukrainian Strij drones recently crashed near Zagreb, the Croatian capital, in March. No one was hurt in that incident, but it touched off concerns in NATO about the war spilling over Ukraine's borders and, potentially, sparking a wider conflict. At the time, both Ukraine and Russia denied having launched the drone, which was reported to have carried a small bomb. But investigators later concluded that it had been launched in Ukraine and, in a demonstration of its long-range capability, crossed Romanian and Hungarian airspace before crashing in Croatia. Strij, in Russian, translates to swift, and the drones are equipped with a turbojet that can fly at speeds 4 to 5 times as fast as the Iranian-made Shahed 136 drone that Russia has been using to attack Ukraine, said Douglas Berry, a military aerospace expert at the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London. Combined with its ability to fly at low altitudes, the Strij can be an extremely difficult drone to shoot down, Mr. Berry said, making it more akin to a Tomahawk cruise missile than the relatively small, slow drones that have littered Ukraine's skies this year. Built for Soviet reconnaissance missions in the 1970s and 1980s, the Strij also has a longer range, up to 620 miles. This thing, pointed in a straight line, will go a long way, Mr. Berry said. But, he said, it remains a fairly rudimentary weapon, and, unless you're extraordinarily lucky, you're not going to do a great deal of damage. Mr. Berry said it was not clear whether the drones that attacked the Russian air bases this week were equipped with bombs, or whether they simply intended to crash into their targets. Either way, the strikes were likely intended to show Russians that they, too, are vulnerable as the war grinds on, after weeks of aerial attacks that have left millions of Ukrainians without heat, electricity or water as winter cold deepens. The Ukrainians have been pretty careful, up until this point, to not attempt to go deep into Russian territory, Mr. Berry said. So you use this as a kind of symbolic gesture. Military officials in Ukraine and among its allies have for months cast the war with Russia as a preview of automated conflict, with robots and remote-controlled weapons doing much of the fighting. It's very much a conflict of unmanned systems, partially because the Ukrainians have been challenging the skies so successfully, said Camille Grand, a defense expert at the European Council on Foreign Relations who until recently oversaw weapons investment policy for NATO. Several senior Western officials from NATO countries on Tuesday characterized Ukraine's attacks against military targets in Russia over the past 2 days as a legitimate and legal act of self-defense that would not necessarily bring NATO closer to direct conflict with Russia. The officials, speaking on ground rules that they remain otherwise unidentified, said that the attacks on Russia were no more of an escalation than Russia's more indiscriminate attacks on Ukraine's civilian infrastructure have been, especially its electrical and energy systems. The targets inside Russia included an oil facility near an airbase, which was hit on Tuesday, and 2 military bases deep inside the country, which were hit on Monday. The senior officials also noted that restrictions remained in place on providing Ukraine sophisticated Western weapons able to reach deep inside Russia, including long-range ATACMS, modern tanks and jets and complex Patriot missile systems. NATO has been carefully calibrating the weapons given to Ukraine to avoid the